edition of Candidates Corner features someone, for full disclosure, my personal physician. Let me close circuit to the other Republicans running in Congressional District 4. You all are invited to come in. We will try to get you all scheduled, but we begin today with Zuhdi Jasser, MD. Dr. Jasser, welcome to Candidates Forum.
It's great to be with you, JD. Thanks for having me in.
I got to tell you, you know Capitol Hill. I'll give you that. As one of the doctors, you came over from Bethesda there in the clinic there on Capitol Hill. And now you want to go back as a member of Congress. Why is that?
Well, our country is on fire. I think we need folks that have been battle tested. I've not only after 9/11 took on radical Islam and created coalitions nationally and globally and helped shape the narrative about that we weren't fighting terrorism, we were fighting Islamism. But also in the pandemic, I saw my profession weaponized against Americans. I saw the Black Lives Matter movement use identity politics and political correctness to tear down our country's foundations and use race and religious identity as some type of weapon against the foundations of America. And my wife and I are raising our kids to be American first and no hyphenations. And yet we came from a country where these our families came from a country where there were none of these freedoms. And my grandfather was in and out of house arrest. And, we started to think after the pandemic, as we saw what was happening with businesses shut down, healthcare being forced upon families, our kids being forced to stay home for no reason whatsoever. And I took on that battle. I was one of the few voices in the country, physicians in primary care, that was saying this is wrong. This is not the right, America that we know. It didn't make scientific sense, and it also took away freedoms. And I feel that I have a unique opportunity to change the narrative about conservatism. I've been able to build coalitions from the America First movement all the way to the traditional conservatives, so build that coalition. I've also been able to navigate a prioritization, sort of like a primary care doc. I can deal with the most important things first, our border, our security, our economy, and then deal with some of the other stuff later. And we really need some of that in Congress. And lastly, I'm an antidote to the Ilhan Omars, Rashida Tlaibs. We've been letting them gaslight us. The radical left, as we saw in the disaster of a president that was on the debate last night, that is a empty vessel of a human being. There's somebody else running the White House, and it's been a cover-up for so long. Those radicals have radicalized the Democratic Party, and if there's one thing I've testified to Congress many times on, it's about how radicalization happens, not only within Muslim communities, but across political movements. And the far left has radicalized, and I can call that out and dispense with the identity politics.
Our guest, Zuhdi Jasser, MD, Republican for Congress, in a spirited field for a spirited primary on July 30th. If you have a question for Zuhdi, why don't you email me, jd@moneyradio.com. If you want to call in with a question, that's cool too. 803-998-1510. You can also text if you have a question. Let me get back a bit more to your biography and your story. And correct me if I'm wrong, your family's culture and heritage is Syria, correct?
Yep.
And did your granddad run the opposition newspaper to the Assads, or what exactly?
Yeah, so in 1948, the French pulled out, and then you had coup after coup because the thugs of society were running the military. And then ultimately in 63, the Ba'ath Party took over, which is this fascist, like the Nazis of Syria. Assad ultimately controlled that party in 1970, but in the 60s you had other dictators, and my grandfather fought against that party. He was part of the the real Democratic Party, and was in and out of house arrest for years. My father, his son, then after he graduated from medical school, escaped into Lebanon. My parents got asylum legally and waited months until they actually got asylum. I was born in the U.S. and grew up in Wisconsin in a small town. But my grandfather taught me that really there's the special sauce in America is not only our Constitution, but our military. A military that takes orders from a civilian government. A military that's made up of the cream of the crop, the best and brightest of society. And that's why I chose to serve in the Navy for 11 years. And that understanding of what they left, what they escaped, my parents became American patriots on the day they stepped off the airplane. And, this is what's unique about America, is that we're an ideology of folks that come together under God to preserve liberty, which is something 70% of the world today does not live under. They live under some type of autocracy or theocracy, as most Muslims live under.
Let me talk to you some. You mentioned the debate in passing. I know doctors don't want to get into the notion of long-distance diagnosis, but it's not medical. Well, I guess it's related to medical situation for the 46th president, but your political diagnosis, both of last night's debate in particular and the Biden administration in general.
Well, first, there's no doubt that it was pretty clear last night that our country, not only by policy and otherwise position in the world, position economically, was better off under President Trump's leadership, but we saw last night a vast difference, that there really is a clear choice that President Trump will bring us back to the America that we know, that we love, and get us away from this radicalization. But the other thing that really I thought was exposed last night, it's not just the fact that last night President Biden had a bad night. This is the cover-up of all cover-ups. I mean, as a doctor who took care of members of Congress, as a doctor who worked at the Naval Hospital, and worked on ships where we would say that people were ready to go on nuclear subs for months, where if they weren't ready, we couldn't put them on a nuclear sub. There are a lot of people complicit in what we saw last night, whether it's Jill Biden, whether it's the cabinet, whether it's members of Congress like Greg Stanton, who's been rubber stamping the Democratic Party policies that are coming from the Biden White House. There's somebody else running the White House. The senile degeneration of the brain that he had demonstrated last night with word salad, the bradykinesia, the dysarthria, these are all medical terms of things that you see in end stage, in moderate to advanced dementia. And this is what we saw last night, and it's a conspiracy of conspiracies that this has been concealed from the American public. And I was told a year ago on Newsmax and other media that, you shouldn't be making these diagnoses. Well, it was pretty obvious.
In other words, this is so obvious you're comfortable making the diagnosis.
And I'm not his doctor, so I'm not, there's no doctor-patient confidentiality.
Sure. Yeah.
So I, as an American, this is not simply, that we're being cruel about somebody that is walking in the street or trying to, have dinner with. He's running the free world. He is in charge of not only the largest budget on the planet, but a Department of Defense, a cabinet. This is somebody with the most significant responsibilities. And I, as a doctor, by the way, Arizona law says that if I see another doctor that's impaired, cognitively or otherwise, I have a legal obligation to report it because they could hurt other patients. So what about the president?
And what about Congress? Zuhdi Jasser, running for the Republican nomination in District 4, email me with a question, jd@moneyradio.com. So what have you learned? A couple of minutes before we take a break. What have you learned in stepping into the arena to run for a seat in the U.S. House?
I think the most poignant thing is, as a community doc, I've been taking care of families in the district for so many years. Their concerns are really what we see on the trail when you're going, knocking on doors, going door to door, talking to people on the phones and other things. You realize that the border are the top three issues: security, drugs coming in, trafficking of human beings, crime that comes in with the cartels, and then the economy, inflation, the fact that you have to make now twice as much money, $120,000, it used to be $55,000, in order to buy a house in Arizona. These are the things that families care about, that they've been telling me. Their cost of their health care is going through the roof. Inflation is not only high by the numbers of 8 to 10%, it's 30, 40% if you go to the grocery store and you actually live as a regular American, which Greg Stanton and others just don't. And they're out of touch. So I've learned that part of representative democracy is to run after you've run a business I've run my business for 25 years, small business, and after you've tried advocacy and been involved in advocacy issues as I have in healthcare, running the Arizona Medical Association and trying to preserve private practice in healthcare, that representative politics should not be a lifetime goal. That there are some folks running that, God bless them for their service, but I think it's important that we elect people that have had a job, that have run a business. Stanton has been a lifetime politician. He's so out of touch. The voters really, all they care about is are our elected officials in touch? And I'm also learning there's a bit of a disconnect between the activists sometimes in a party and the voting population, which is how President Trump got elected, which is that he obviously connected with the voting population. And now he's upending the establishment, which was the party apparatus.
And the whole notion of Donald Trump, your evolution of regards for the 45th president, and one of the bones of contention that has arisen in this primary. When we come back, I'll try to actually engage in reasonable voice and diction and ask the questions of M. Zuhdi Jasser. Candidates Corner with our guest, 4th District Republican candidate for Congress, M. Zuhdi Jasser. You have questions for Dr. Jasser, 803-998-1510, or send them to me. You can text them at the same number. It doesn't have to be a call. Or you can email me, jd@moneyradio.com, which, Dr. Jasser, reminds me, since we're so internet-centric these days, if people want to find out more about you and more about the campaign, what's the website?
It's Z for AZ, ZFORAZ.com. And please go to the website, see our platform, sign up to our email list, help us volunteer for getting out the word and getting in the neighborhoods, and hopefully electing a candidate that can beat Stanton, because that's the key, is who can beat Stanton.
Well, you mentioned Greg Stanton's allegiance to Joe Biden. Do you have an empirical number? How much does he vote in terms of the administration's desires?
100%. 100% of the time in line with Biden. And even when Rashida Tlaib came into our district at ASU to raise money for a terrorist organization, Students for Justice in Palestine, he couldn't even have the spine to vote to censure her, which would have been a meaningless vote, but at least he would have voted to censure, and he couldn't do that.
Well, I know yesterday, and I brought it up on the air, there was a vote for taking away the salary. Andy Biggs, the 5th District Congressman, had an amendment to the appropriations bill saying, we call the Secretary of Homeland Security the bald-headed rat on this program, and he was trying to take away the cheese for the bald-headed rat, and the only Arizonan, the guy we call Homer Pyle, the Senate hopeful, still serving in Congress, couldn't vote. He walked away, which speaks volumes about that and the Senate race, but Greg Stanton voted, no, we need to make sure that the Homeland Security Secretary is paid.
He's completely spineless, and he's missing in action, and I think he was. People should not forget when he was mayor of Phoenix, he wanted to make it a sanctuary city. He's been missing in action on the border, completely out of touch on most issues that matter to the families in the district. I think the most fitting thing was recently, I think 2 days ago, they unveiled that his name is gonna be put on the central, light rail station, and I think there's nothing more fitting than the sort of useless $1 billion boondoggle that was a fleecing of the Phoenix taxpayers to have his name on it, because that's sort of the representation that he's had.
Planes, trains, automobiles, we're a mobile society. And yet one of the, we shared a good bit of one of the early debates among you and the other aspirants for the Republicans in District 4. Much was made of the fact that your residence is not in the district. That seemed to come up time and again.
Well, I think, ultimately my heart and soul is in the district. I've been working, taking care of families. Over almost a half of my patients, a third to a half, are in district. So I know and feel their pain in Tempe, in Mesa, Chandler. These are the patients that come to me, that see me. This is where I serve. So, where my address is. You know, if Kelly Cooper cares about that, he always seems to talk about where his restaurants are, where he serves. So at the end of the day, Greg Stanton doesn't live in the district. We want somebody that knows the families of the district, that's been caring for them, and I would put my record of service to our district up against anybody's. And ASU, I was the one that was protesting the mosque there that's Saudi funded, that's radicalized. I've been an advocate for the issues that protect the district, whether it's crime related, border, security, terrorism, all these issues. I've been there for decades.
What do you do to, primaries can be contentious. How does everybody come together? Because last time, didn't a couple of the candidates sue each other, or there's legal action that was going on?
Yeah, I'm not aware of, I think, ultimately this is the issue, is that can you move on? Because the bigger issue is this is a seat that should be flipped. This is a seat that used to be the Cinema D plus 8% district. Now it's a completely split district, swing district, where it's D plus 1.5 to 2. And Stanton has no business being there, especially in this year. So we should be able to get the vote out. We should be able to come together after I win the primary, after we move forward, God willing. But ultimately, there has to be a gentlemanly process to moving forward and saying, listen, there is a huge difference between some of the issues that we might disagree in the primary versus the radicalism that Stanton has been a rubber stamp for versus the Biden policies. And we need to field somebody that can win. Kelly Cooper lost by 12 points in a split district. That Ducey won by 6 points. Kimberly Yee won by 2 points. So why field the same guy again? He has no change on his website. He's got pablum on his website related to the border where it says that the migrants need to come out of the shadows. And, I think obviously voters would rather have somebody that's straightforward with them, that has been consistent in my ideas since I was in my teens. I've been a conservative. I didn't come to conservatives. I mean, talk about carpetbaggers, real carpetbaggers, the guy who comes to the Republican Party a year before he decides to run for Congress. He was getting Green Party ballots, was a Democrat a year before that, and then decided to run in 2020. So, this is the issue, is that there's a reason he lost last time. And we need to be able to field a candidate that's consistent, trusted, and a leader in the community.
Only about 3 minutes remain. What used to be time for a standard phone call, given telephone etiquette, but we're here on the radio in the 3 minutes we have left. A lot of people go on political journeys. If memory serves, 2016, you were skeptical of Donald Trump and his candidacy. What changed?
So a number of things. First of all, 2016, I was a Rubio delegate, and then Senator Rubio dropped out. I became a Cruz delegate, and President Trump at the time was a candidate, a nominee, and he had not been known. He was a Democrat a few years before, and a number, if not a majority in the conservative movement, were very worried. And J.D. Vance was much louder than I was about his concerns about President Trump, and he was actually more critical than I was. And I simply resigned from being a delegate because I didn't feel comfortable voting for him. When he became my president, I simply then started to address his policies, and I would defy anybody after he became my president, my commander-in-chief, to find anything I said that wasn't true to my conservative values that I've had since I was in high school.
Just to make sure we get every part of this covered, you have a secret ballot, but given some consternation about Republicans, did you cast your ballot in 2016 for Trump in the general election?
Yes, I did. Not in the primary. Didn't vote for him, but in the general I did, and I voted for him again in 2020.
And now there is the possibility that you will share the ballot with Donald Trump. I know that is your desire. I don't mean to sow any seeds of negativism, but Richard Nixon wrote a book giving advice to people running it. He said, the first thing you have to ask yourself is, what do I do if I lose? I don't know if you've thought about that, but if you finish second, and it's happened to me a couple of times in politics, what would be next?
I continue to take care of my patients, continue to serve my community, and continue to work on legacy. I think the biggest thing and one of the main reasons I'm running is legacy. And I want to leave this world as my family does. They were the first people I talked to when I decided to run. So my family and I will have another conversation. Right now we're dedicated to winning this. I believe that we can. I think I'm the only candidate in this field that can beat Stanton and go toe-to-toe with him. And if you look, not only do I check off the boxes of diversity, but I have a national platform that can raise money multiple times more than Kelly Cooper. One of the reasons he lost was he wasn't able to raise the money. And I will move forward to work on that legacy in whatever role God has for me.
Obviously, you've talked about grassroots in the 30 seconds that remain, the greenbacks. There has to be a combination, grassroots and greenbacks. What kind of money have you been able to raise to challenge an incumbent? Well, first to get through the primary, then get ready.
I mean, this is, I think, Kelly started running within 2 weeks of losing last time, and we've raised more money than he has in that entire time. Since October, we've raised over 600, towards 600,000, and he's barely a portion of that. So I think that speaks to our ability in the primary, and we hope to be able to do it nationally with the NRCC and the platforms that we have.
Zuhdi Jasser, thanks for coming by. Back on Monday. Take care.
Retired or